Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. You guys know I just love Ban.land, and we've already gone through the wiki, we've done some anonymous interviews,
Yeah.
and even gone through some of those crazy chat logs. But this deep dive is going to be a little bit different. It's going to be more of a character spotlight because it all revolves around this really, really cool interview I did with a Ban.land veteran, a guy named Cloudman.
Yeah, focusing on a single perspective can be so valuable, right? It's like shifting from that wide-angle lens to a close-up view, and it really lets you get a much better grasp on the individual experiences inside of that chaotic world.
Dude, it really is.
Yeah.
Cloudman was not just any player. This guy was a leader in a really powerful faction called New Athens. They were known for, kind of this unique mix of order and chaos,
Mm-hmm.
which is kind of wild to think about on an anarchy server, right?
Right.
But here's the thing. New Athens didn't even begin on Ban.land. They actually migrated over from a totally different server called Venture Vanilla,
Yeah.
and they brought their whole history and traditions with them.
That's really interesting. It adds this whole other layer to their story, right? They were transplanting this pre-existing community structure into a new and unpredictable environment. And it wasn't just adapting to Ban.land. They were actually trying to shape it. They brought their own vision of order into a server known for having absolutely zero rule.
I know, it's crazy to think about.
Hmm.
And Cloudman was right there in the middle of it all. He led their ambassador guild, and he got to see some of Ban.land's most important moments firsthand, like working alongside big names like SupremeTech, having run-ins with the infamous AlphaCheater, and even fighting a duel for another player's freedom. I'm telling you, his story's packed with twists and turns. You're going to have to rethink what you thought you knew about Ban.land.
Okay, I'm ready for it. Let's jump right into this interview and see what we can discover.
So, all right, picture this for a second. You're Cloudman. You're brand new to Ban.land. You've just migrated over with New Athens. Spawn is just this complete mess. Everyone's scrambling to get resources, and there's danger around every single corner. What's the first thing you grab? A weapon. Some tools. Nope. Cloudman gets out of Spawn holding just a single cactus block.
A cactus block. That's a strange choice, especially in that kind of environment. Most players would be, they would be worried about their immediate survival needs. It makes you wonder what that cactus block meant to him.
Exactly. He called it the Cactus of Life. And he didn't just keep it safe, he actually built on it every single time it was destroyed, which, happened a lot in that world. He would carefully rebuild it piece by piece. He even lost the original block at some point.
Yeah.
And had to rebuild it from memory, making sure every single piece was in the right spot.
Wow, that's really amazing. This simple object turned into a symbol, right? A symbol of his persistence and his resilience in this world where everything was being destroyed. It reminds us that even when everything's crazy, people still try to find meaning, even in the most unexpected places. And this cactus, the symbol of life in the middle of all this destruction, really shows us how players dealt with all the craziness of Ban.land.
I know, it's awesome. It wasn't about, how much it was worth. It was about what it represented to him.
Yeah.
Now remember, SupremeTech, the player who changed Spawn, well, Cloudman was right there with him, helping to build those first two Spawn bases.
Yeah.
Like these centers of activity, always changing.
Yeah.
Packed with players, trading, working together. And causes of chaos, too. They even worked with this player named Sir Widget Dog, who built these massive mob spawners. Can you imagine how huge those things were?
Wow, that's really impressive. They weren't just surviving, they were shaping the server, creating places for players to meet and interact. And building those mob spawners. That's a huge project. It shows how ambitious they were and how much they wanted to push the limits of what you could do in the game.
Definitely. And it was during this time that they made the laws of New Athens. They were written on their wall of law. Rules like, thou shalt not clutter, thou shalt not possess hoes of gold or unclean minerals, and even thou shalt not bring real-life drama into this community. And they also had the 5 Mambos, which were like guiding principles for their faction.
It's so interesting how they combine these things that seem like opposites, right? Laws and anarchy. You wouldn't think there would be rules on an anarchy server. But New Athens embraced that mix. It shows that even in a place with no rules, people still want structure and shared values.
I know, right? It's like this basic human need for order, even in the most chaotic places. They even had specific punishments for breaking the laws, which often meant being beaten with diamond hoes. Talk about a unique justice system.
Diamond hose. That's a pretty creative way to keep things in order. It shows the playful, kind of absurd humor that was so big on Ban.land. It makes you wonder, did these rituals and traditions help to make their community stronger?
That's a great question. It's like even in a world with no rules, people still want to create their own rules and rituals. It's almost like it helps them make sense of all the chaos.
Yeah, definitely. Rituals, even strange ones, can make people feel like they belong and share something in common. It's a way of saying, this is who we are, and this is what we believe in, even in this crazy world.
So they had laws and mambos, but they also had a pretty complex political structure. Think of it like a real-world government, just with a Minecraft twist. They had a triumvirate, with each member leading a different division, military science and the Ambassador Guild, which Cloud.Man was in charge of.
A triumvirate. That's interesting. It suggests a balance of power, a way to keep things in check within their leadership. Even while trying to create order, they knew it was important to spread out the power and prevent any one person from becoming too powerful.
Exactly. And each division had its own responsibilities. The military was all about defense, protecting New Athens from threats. The science division was focused on innovation, experimenting with redstone contraptions, and pushing the limits of what you could do in the game. And Cloud.Man's Ambassador Guild, they were the diplomats, the peacemakers, the ones who tried to avoid conflicts and keep things cool with other factions.
It's remarkable how they mirrored real-world societies inside the game. This wasn't just a group of friends playing Minecraft. They were building a miniature society with its own government laws and even diplomats. It says a lot about how ambitious they were and their desire to create something truly unique and meaningful within the game.
It really does. And get this, they even had a treasurer, the Era Rigid Dog, who held this special position they called the Fourth Triumvirate. He was also the CEO of Widgeco. You knew that?
That's crazy. A treasurer, a CEO. It's like they were running a real company inside the game. It adds to their complexity and shows how seriously they took their roles in New Athens.
And they even had this special ritual for new members called the Diamond Hoe Baptism. You ready for this? New members would have to put their bed in front of the statue of the free bird, which was New Athens' symbol, and then they'd have to get beaten by the current members, all using diamond hoes.
Beaten with diamond hoes. That's an intense initiation. But I guess it makes sense in a way. It's a test of endurance, right? A symbolic way to prove you're committed to the faction. It also shows how important tradition and ritual were to them, even if those traditions were a little bit unconventional.
Totally. And it often ended up with players dying, which led to a collection of player heads. They kept these heads for special reasons, like getting people out of end prisons, which were these really tough places to escape from.
It's cool how they incorporated parts of the game's mechanics into their traditions. Those player heads weren't just trophies, they had a real purpose within their community. It shows how immersed they were in Ban.land, and how they creatively used the game's features to their advantage. It's like they were creating their own mythology, their own unique lore within this larger digital world.
It really is. And remember, all this is happening on a server that's supposed to be about chaos and having no rules. It just shows that people are complicated even in a virtual world. We want to connect with others. We create structure. And we find ways to make sense of the world around us, even when that world is designed to be unpredictable.
Absolutely. It makes you wonder what other stories and complexities are hidden within Ban.land's history. What other individuals like Cloud.Man helped to shape this unique and dynamic digital landscape?
That's a great question. And guess what? We're only just scratching the surface of Cloud.Man's story. We'll be back in part 2 to dive deeper into his adventures, including his encounters with AlphaCheater and the infamous Efficiency 255 pickaxe incident. You definitely won't want to miss that. So we know New Athens was like this awesome mix of order and chaos, but they were still just one faction in the crazy world of Ban.land, right? And that meant dealing with the wild and unpredictable nature of the server, especially when the leaders of New Athens weren't online.
Yeah, makes sense. Even in a really well-organized group, there's always a chance for things to go wrong when the leaders are gone. It's like a vacuum that can lead to all sorts of unexpected things happening.
Exactly. And when Freebird and Kirby,
Yeah.
the first and second triumvirates, were offline for a while, Cloud.Man kind of stepped into a new role. He became known as the Mad Scientist during that time.
Mad Scientist. That sounds interesting. It seems like a big change from his usual job as a diplomat. What kind of experiments or projects did he do to get that name?
Well, he really got into redstone technology and contraptions, pushing the limits of what was possible in the game. Redstone is like Minecraft's version of electricity. So you can make some pretty crazy things with it.
Yeah, I bet. It must have been really exciting for him. A chance to be creative and use his technical skills in a way that his normal job didn't allow. It's interesting how these temporary changes in leadership can give people a chance to show hidden talents and passions.
For sure. But with experimentation comes the risk of making mistakes, right? And even the Mad Scientist had his share of mishaps. There was this one time when Cloudman accidentally killed Freebird. It happened in the sewers of New Athens while they were fighting a golem.
Oh, wow. Accidents happen in a game like Minecraft. But I imagine this one was a big deal because Freebird was a leader. How did New Athens deal with that?
Well, Freebird, being the character he was, decided to have some fun with it. He changed his skin to a skeleton and declared that the only way to bring him back to life was for Cloudman to collect 100,000 inappropriate items.
100,000 inappropriate items. That's quite the challenge. It sounds like they turned this accident into a chance to laugh and bond as a community. What exactly counted as an inappropriate item in their world?
It was pretty much up to anyone's interpretation, which led to a lot of creativity and probably some pretty questionable builds, too. Think of it as a giant inside joke, a way to take an awkward situation and turn it into a shared experience.
It shows the unique culture they had in New Athens, a place where humor and absurdity could exist even in the middle of all the challenges of surviving on an anarchy server. It shows how they could find joy and connection even when things went wrong.
Exactly. And then there was the time when they tried to convince Wood, the server admin, to add the sit command to the game. They were sure that if they built a solid gold statue of Kid Rock, he would give in.
A solid gold Kid Rock statue. That's incredible. It's both hilarious and impressive how dedicated they were. It shows how far they were willing to go, even for something small like a sit command. But why Kid Rock? What made them choose him?
I think it was a mix of inside jokes and a playful way to challenge Wide. Remember, he had that whole no Pepsi, no service thing, so they knew he had a sense of humor.
That's right. It sounds like they were testing the limits, seeing how far they could push the rules of the server and the admin. It's like they were constantly playing this game between order and chaos, pushing the boundaries of what was allowed, but still respecting the basic structure of the game.
You got it. It was all part of the Ban.land dynamic, that constant back and forth between freedom and limitations.
Yeah.
Sadly, the Kid Rock statue never actually got built. But it's a perfect example of the kind of outside-the-box thinking that made New Athens so special.
It really is. And you mentioned Cloudman having some run-ins with AlphaCheater, one of Ban.land's most notorious players. What was it like when they interacted?
Well, this is a good one. So, AlphaCheater was this legendary PvPer, known for being really skilled and sometimes using ruthless tactics. Well, there was this incident where Cloudman had to fight him in a duel, another New Athens member. Marc had been captured by AlphaCheater, and Cloudman, being the loyal friend that he was, decided to fight for Marc's freedom.
A duel with AlphaCheater? That's really brave considering AlphaCheater's reputation. That must have been a tense situation. What were the rules of the duel, and how did Cloudman approach such a difficult challenge?
Well, Cloudman wasn't exactly known for his PvP skills, so he had to use some unconventional tactics. He used an elytra, those wing-like things in the game that let players glide through the air.
So he challenged this famous PvPer to a duel in the sky. That's a bold move. It shows how resourceful he was and how he was willing to think outside the box even under pressure. How did the duel go?
Oh, man. It was wild. They even ended up fighting underground at one point, and Cloudman almost died. But somehow he managed to get away. And the craziest thing is, AlphaCheater actually thought the whole thing was funny. He respected Cloudman's courage, and in the end, he let Marc go free.
Wow, that's surprising. It seems like AlphaCheater, even with his reputation, had a code of honor, a sense of fairness that went beyond his aggressive playstyle. It shows that even in the lawless world of Ban.land, there were unwritten rules and moments of unexpected compassion.
For sure. And after that, they actually became kind of friendly. AlphaCheater even got a tour of New Athens, which is pretty wild considering what happened between them.
That just goes to show the power of shared experiences, even ones as intense as a duel where your life is on the line. It seems like the anarchy of Ban.land, while it definitely encouraged competition and conflict, also created chances for unexpected friendships to form. It's a reminder that even in the toughest environments, people can still connect with each other.
I love that. It's like even in all the chaos, there's still room for friendship. But don't think that Ban.land was all sunshine and rainbows. There's still plenty of dangers around. And some players really love that chaotic spirit more than others.
Yeah, I'm sure there were a lot of players who thrived on the unpredictability and the fact that there were no rules. I have a feeling we're about to hear about one of them.
You read my mind. Let's talk about Russ.
Russ. Remind me about him. What was his story, and how did he interact with New Athens?
Think of him like AlphaCheater's chaotic twin. He was known for being unpredictable, and he loved pushing people's buttons. He wasn't necessarily mean, but he definitely enjoyed stirring things up and creating drama.
So not exactly the friendly, welcoming type.
Not really.
Yeah.
He would show up at New Athens without warning, just to cause trouble. He even killed Cloudman at his bed multiple times. And there's that one time he killed Cloudman's dogs.
Ouch. That's harsh. Sounds like you really embrace that anything goes mentality that some players associate with anarchy servers. He thrived on the lack of rules and the freedom to do whatever he wanted, even if it meant messing with the order that other players had worked hard to create.
Exactly. He wasn't necessarily trying to destroy New Athens, but he definitely liked testing their limits and reminding them that true anarchy meant that anyone could do anything at any time. And to really make his presence known, he built a giant statue of Christ the Redeemer overlooking New Athens.
A statue of Christ the Redeemer. That's an interesting choice. What do you think the message was behind that?
It was a subtle threat, a constant reminder that he could destroy everything they built if he wanted to. It was a power move. Like he was saying, I'm here, I'm watching, and I can do whatever I want.
That's kind of scary to think about. It reminds you how vulnerable even the most organized groups are in a place like Ban.land. No matter how many rules you make or structures you build, there's always the possibility that someone could come along and destroy everything.
That's true. And Cloudman knew that. He decided to tolerate Russ's presence because he thought it was the best way to protect New Athens. He knew they couldn't stop Russ if he really wanted to go on a rampage. So he chose a strategy of being careful and diplomatic, a balance between asserting their authority and avoiding unnecessary conflict.
That's a smart approach. Sometimes the best way to deal with chaos is to choose your battles carefully and try to use diplomacy instead of confrontation whenever you can. It shows a level of maturity and strategic thinking that's impressive, especially considering how high the stakes were in their situation.
Absolutely. And speaking of high stakes, get ready for this next story, because it involves one of the most infamous items in Ban.land history, the Efficiency 255 pickaxe.
Efficiency 255, that sounds ominous. What exactly does that mean in the world of Minecraft, and how did it become a thing on Ban.land?
Okay, so imagine this. It's basically a pickaxe that's so powerful it can mine through anything instantly. And it all started with this event called the Wid Genie event. Wid, the server admin, offered to grant players wishes if they completed certain challenges.
A genie event? That sounds like something out of a fairy tale, or at least something a very creative admin would come up with. I bet that got all the players really excited. Who managed to get the genie's attention?
Well, Russ, being the skilled player he was the only one fast enough to finish the challenges.
Yeah.
And what do you think his first wish was? You guessed it. The Efficiency 255 pickaxe.
Wow. So it wasn't just a powerful item. It was a gift from the admin himself. No wonder it became legendary. It's like having a piece of the server's code, a physical representation of the admin's power. What did Russ do with this amazing tool?
Now, he didn't waste any time putting it to work. He immediately used it to break through the obsidian at Endspawn, which was supposed to be unbreakable. It was a huge deal because Endspawn was considered this sacred place, a challenge for even the best players. But with the Efficiency 255 pickaxe, Russ basically skipped all of that.
So he basically used his wish to break the game. It's interesting how this seemingly harmless event, a fun genie challenge, ended up having such big consequences for the server's balance and the relationships between players.
It really shows how unpredictable Ban.land was, even with an admin running things. And it gets even crazier. Russ used his other wishes to make the pickaxe unbreakable and to make sure that no one else could ever have its power.
So he made himself the only one with this ultimate tool. I bet the other players were worried knowing that someone had that much power. Did anyone try to challenge him or take the pickaxe for themselves?
Oh, definitely.
Okay.
Other players realized how dangerous this pickaxe could be in the wrong hands. They formed alliances and launched these daring raids to try to steal it. There were huge battles, betrayals, and even players who tried to use glitches in the game to duplicate the pickaxe.
So the Efficiency 255 pickaxe turned into this thing that everyone wanted, a symbol of power that caused chaos and conflict. Did anyone manage to get it from Russ, or did he stay the undisputed champion of destruction?
It's a crazy story. And we'll get into all the details of what happened next in part 3, but let's just say the battle for the Efficiency 255 pickaxe had some unexpected twists and turns that left no one unscathed. Not even Cloudman in New Athens. Stay tuned. Okay, so last time we left off with Russ. He had the Efficiency 255 pickaxe. That tool that was so powerful it could change Ban.land forever. It was like this digital Excalibur,
Yeah.
Capable of both creating and destroying on a massive scale.
And as we've seen, power, even in a virtual world, can be a dangerous thing. It can make people ambitious and afraid and lead to conflict and unexpected outcomes.
Exactly. Now,
Yeah.
remember, New Athens was all about building and creating. So when they saw this crazy, powerful tool, their first thought wasn't about griefing or destruction. They actually wanted to use it for good, to help shape the server in a positive way.
It's interesting how even with all that power, they still stuck to their values of construction and community building. It shows the core principles that guided New Athens, the belief that even in a world without rules, you could still try to create something positive and lasting.
For sure. But they knew they couldn't just ask Russ to borrow it, right? So a group of players, including Cloudman, decided to take matters into their own hands. They came up with this plan to try and steal the pickaxe from Russ. It was a long shot, but they were determined.
That's a bold move, trying to steal from someone like Russ, especially with an item as valuable as the Efficiency 255 pickaxe. That must have been an intense operation.
Oh, it was. They spent weeks planning and gathering resources. They even recruited players from other factions to help. It was like this massive undercover operation with secret meetings and coded messages, all to try and get their hands on this legendary pickaxe.
So what happened? Were they able to pull it off?
Well, they almost did. They managed to infiltrate Russ's base and get close to the pickaxe. But Russ was no fool. He had set traps and defenses everywhere, and a huge battle broke out. It was chaos.
So they didn't get the pickaxe?
Not exactly. In the middle of all the fighting, someone managed to exploit a glitch in the game, and they accidentally duplicated the pickaxe. Suddenly, everyone had an Efficiency 255 pickaxe.
Wow, that's a huge twist. I bet that changed everything.
Oh yeah, it did. The balance of power shifted completely. Players who were once struggling to survive suddenly had the ability to mine through anything. It was like the whole server went into overdrive.
It's fascinating how one little glitch could have such a big impact on the entire server.
And it wasn't just about the power of the pickaxe itself. It was about what it represented. The idea that even in a world with no rules, there were still ways to break the system, to bend the rules to your will.
It's like a metaphor for the way things work in the real world sometimes. We create systems and rules, but there are always people who find ways to exploit them.
Exactly. And on Ban.land, the duplication of the Efficiency 255 pickaxe was a turning point. It marked the beginning of the end for the server.
What do you mean?
Once everyone had this incredibly powerful tool, it kind of took away the challenge of the game. It was like playing on easy mode all the time. The thrill of exploration and discovery was gone, and the economy of the server collapsed.
It's like too much of a good thing can actually be bad. The abundance of resources created by the duped pickaxes made everything less valuable. Things that were once rare and special, things that players worked hard to acquire, suddenly became commonplace.
And the players started to lose interest. They logged in less and less, and the server started to feel empty. It was like a slow death.
It's sad to think about this once vibrant community fading away. It reminds you that even the most successful online worlds are still fragile.
And Cloudman was right there to see it all happen. He told me that in the final days of Ban.land, he felt a growing sense of isolation. He'd log in, build a little, chat with a few remaining players. But the energy, that spark that had made Ban.land so special, was gone.
It must have been bittersweet for him to witness the decline of a world that he had helped to create, a community that he had been a part of for so long.
And then one day,
Yeah.
it was just over. The server disappeared, the Discord went quiet, and the community scattered. Just like that. A world that had been so full of life and possibility is gone.
It's a reminder that online spaces, even the ones that feel real and immersive, can disappear in an instant.
But even though Ban.land is gone, its legacy lives on. It lives on in the stories of the players who experienced it, in the videos and forum posts that documented its history, and in the lessons we can learn from its rise and fall.
Absolutely. So as we wrap up our deep dive into Ban.land, I think the biggest takeaway is this. Even in a world without rules, we find ways to create our own. We build communities. We establish values. And we try to leave our mark.
I totally agree. And even though those worlds might be temporary, the experiences we have, the connections we make, and the lessons we learn can stay with us long after the servers are gone. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Ban.land. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.